Hi, welcome to Homemade TV on Sunday the 10th of May 2020. I'm out taking my Sunday morning walk and I've taken advantage of the rules now that allow us to drive a short distance to somewhere nicer than where we normally walk. I'm walking for about half an hour, I hope, down here at the Landguard Point at Felixstowe. It's very nice. It's a nature reserve and it gives you a chance to get around and have a stroll and really quite enjoy yourself, so I do that. Okay, well, what we're doing today on this little show is bringing you up to date a bit, and we're also going to start talking about one of the things that does tend to preoccupy us older generation, which is travelling, getting a break and stuff like that. Things have changed, as you know, and we're looking forward to a bit more relaxation on the lockdown rules, hopefully this evening when the Prime Minister gets on the telly, but I don't think we're going to get any kind of major change, do you? The thing that interests me about the holiday scene at the moment is that nearly all the holiday companies would like us to book some holidays, but the reality is that if you book a holiday, you can't really be too sure what's going to happen to it. There are a number of factors that actually kick in on the holiday front. One of them, for instance, that we really have to take considerable care about is the possibility that the company we elect to go with goes bust between now and then. Where do you stand? The other thing that's interesting is going to be health insurance while you're on holiday, or what kind of health insurance you can book when you're going on holiday. So we're going to look at that shortly, and I've got a little bit of news on that actually took me rather aback, and I think probably will you as well. So there you go, I'm Chris, this is Homemade TV, and enjoy the rest of our clip. One of the important components of homemade TV, especially relevant to older people like you and me, is short breaks, holidays, cruises, getting away from it all and having the nicest possible life we can have. With COVID-19 on the scene, that's making life pretty difficult for actually planning or taking holidays. One of the things that we promised to do in our little introduction program was have a look at the cruise industry and the short break industry. So we've started with cruise lines. Cruise lines are I'd say they're really in a hellish position from their point of view, because they can't make their mind up what they're going to do, because every time they do, or every time they try to, statutory bodies like states, like authorities, for instance the CDC in America, change the rules, and what they say is, well, no, we don't think you can do that, guys, we think it's going to take longer than that, and so on. So in reality, you get all kinds of odd and interesting stories. From my point of view, I was looking at a couple of American companies, and they've been saying, well, we'll start cruising again in June, and then they go back in July, and maybe in August. And all of that comes down to the CDC, the American Center for Disease Control, which is actually constantly changing their parameters and their distances to semi-normal life returning. Interesting one, isn't it? We also have the same problem in the UK and most of the rest of the world, to be honest with you. The cruise lines are very much at government control. If they can't get into ports, then they can't operate there. If they can't get into ports to load passengers, they can't operate at all. So it's all getting really sticky for them. At the moment, all of the cruise lines, I think, are trying to sell you cruises. The problem that you have is if you book a cruise and you say, go on their latest advice and say, well, we'll go in September, it's just as likely that come September, your cruise line or their government will say, no, you can't. So what do you do? My personal view on it would be probably not to book, because you don't quite know what's going to happen. Booking, well, you may well have to lay in a deposit. If you lay down a deposit, then who knows? The reality is that I believe, purely personally, looking at the figures, it's possible that one or two of the cruise lines simply may not be able to weather this particular storm. Who knows? And if you've paid them a deposit, you're not covered by similar arrangements to ATOL with aircraft. So in fact, you're not quite as protected as you might be, although you should be able to take out some form of insurance to prevent you losing your money, but that just costs you more money, doesn't it? So there you go. My advice would be to sit on your hands a little bit, not necessarily for too long, but until you're reasonably sure about what's happening. The same thing is true of short breaks and proper holidays, i.e. ones that you jump in an aeroplane for. At the moment, no one knows when aeroplanes will start going again, and no one knows when ships will start sailing again. So there you have it. The other side of the argument as well on this one is insurance. Now, I was talking to one of the big insurance companies, I won't name names, but they said, essentially, I'll read the piece for you. This refers purely to COVID-19 and their viewpoint. As you know, with insurance, they quite often will not cover existing conditions. And they're now saying effectively that COVID-19 is effectively an existing condition. As COVID-19 is no longer an unforeseen event, we won't be able to cover you for anything caused by or related to it. So in other words, whatever your insurance status with one very major company, if you take out an insurance policy, you need to be aware that unless all the advice changes, you won't be covered for COVID-19. That means that anything that happens that they can relate to COVID-19, you won't get paid out on. That's really quite scary. The factor that controls the insurance company's attitudes to how they pay out is essentially the Foreign and Commonwealth Office advice. If the FCO says you shouldn't travel here, you shouldn't travel there, you shouldn't travel at all, then you won't be covered by any insurance policy unless it is specifically designed to cover you in those circumstances. So in other words, if you take out an insurance company and say, I want to be covered against COVID-19 and all other health conditions if I go X, Y, and Z, and if the company is willing to take it, then in that case you're covered. But if they're not willing to take it because you're working against government advice, then you're stuffed. And that's it for today's clip. My name's Chris, this is Homemade TV, and we will see you soon.